Once again, here in 1941, we see the U.S. government going after RCA for monopolistic practices. This time, the Federal Communication Commission was concerned about RCA's monopolistic practice in terms of radio programming and networks, because at this time in the early 40s, RCA had not one, but two radio networks, NBC Blue and NBC Red, that each had its own group of affiliated stations. Here, the FCC was concerned that this gave RCA too much power and too much influence over the medium of radio, and that it tended to undermine free expression and diversity. So it required RCA to sell off one of its two networks, and it sold off the NBC Blue group of stations, and that later became ABC, the American Broadcasting Company. The early shows on radio in the 1930s were live. There was a lot of live music, and shows were usually only 15 minutes long, and they were a mix of variety shows with a lot of music and comedy. There were also quiz shows, game shows, and dramas. What's interesting about these early shows is that most of them only had one advertiser that sponsored the entire show. So you had a cigarette company or a beverage producer that sponsored an entire show. Actually, when you think of it, the reason we refer to soap operas as soaps is that back at this time, soap companies would sponsor a lot of these dramas, giving them the name soaps. One of the most popular shows in radio in the 1930s was the comedy Amos and Andy, that featured the comic misadventures of two black characters and their friends. The show was widely derided for its really crass caricatures of black characters as being really stupid, unintelligent, lazy, doing anything to avoid hard work. And I think what was also interesting is that this radio show, even though it featured black characters, the actors that played these characters on the show were actually white males that spoke the lines for the show on radio. So another interesting feature of this show is that with the emergence of television in the 1950s, the show moved over to television, and there it had an entirely black cast. Now, the show itself wound up being canceled in the early 50s because of a lot of complaints from civil rights groups and organizations for the really, crass racial stereotypes. I think it's also important to consider these larger issues about how mass media, like radio and later television, represented issues like race. And clearly the portrayal of blacks on Amos and Andy was not confined to that one show, that some scholars have argued that through the years on radio shows and later TV shows, we would see this prevalent representation of blacks as being less intelligent than whites, less willing to engage in hard work, and so on. And it raises questions about what were some of the long-term influences of these kinds of portrayals of race. Companies that owned radio stations increasingly embraced the idea of format radio. According to this idea, your programming for the radio station would be presented according to some predetermined formula where certain types of content would be repeated on an hourly basis, so that at certain points every hour you might have weather updates, news updates, quick bits of information about local events. The radio station might also decide that they're going to play a certain number of hits by current acts and throw into the mix maybe one or two older songs every hour. Now, what's interesting about this format approach to radio is that it really shifts the power and influence over programming away from the DJ and towards the management of that station. Prior to this idea of format radio, DJs or disc jockeys had a lot more autonomy and flexibility for their shows, so that the DJs would usually have some power to decide what songs they would play and what they would talk about during the course of their show. The idea of format radio took away this latitude from the disc jockey, who was increasingly required to follow a particular script, and the DJ would be told to say these certain things at this point along the broadcast day. This idea of format radio also led to the development of Top 40 radio, which is a format where the station would just play this continuous mix of current hits by very popular artists, and again, maybe throw in one or two older songs. Also, radio stations increasingly divided the day up into parts and adjusted their programming for certain audiences that would be listening at certain times of the day. So, for instance, early in the morning, like from 6 to 9 a.m., there would be more traffic and weather reports, because a lot of the people listening would be in their cars commuting. And again, this kind of relied on stereotypes at the time, but in the mid-morning and mid-afternoon time slots, like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the radio stations assumed that their audience was primarily housewives and women at home. So the stations would play softer music, more romantic songs that they assumed would appeal more to a female audience. There is an increasing array of formats for radio stations. Among the music formats, you have contemporary hit radio, CHR, that is the updated version of Top 40 radio, adult contemporary, classic rock, oldies, and so on. But I wanted to just note in particular the success of the talk radio format. Over the past 10, 20 years, talk radio stations have become increasingly successful, especially through formats featuring conservative talk show hosts like Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh. And for me, this raises a couple of questions that we might get at in the discussion boards, which is, why is it that radio seems to lend itself towards conservative hosts rather than liberal ones? Why is it that conservatives seem to find so much success in talk radio, whereas liberals and political progressives really can't seem to gain a following in this media sector? Is it something about radio itself? Is it that the U.S. is a inherently more conservative country, or do liberals and progressives gravitate to other forms of media? So what are your thoughts on this?